L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim v'li v'racha, to life and for blessings. What is life? What is blessing? Some people are always looking for change. I don't mean a quarter. To change up things in life. And some people are very happy with no change. They love their routine. They want things to always be in the same place, same time, breakfast, same time, Tanya study. And they love the routine. They don't want change. So should we be changing things up? Should we keep the routine? What is the divine way? Welcome to Tanya Today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. L'chaim v'racha, for life and for blessings, that we continue our routine. But in that routine, hopefully there's great change in me and in every single one of us. And it should be not in cents, but in dollars. Real change from within. L'chaim. Where does that come from? That there should be real change. You know, the guy who goes to the store, corner store, he buys a few things, he gives a $50, $100 note, and he puts out his hand and he says, "Change, please." And the young girl says to him, "I'm sorry, sir, change comes from within." We are continuing in chapter 7. In chapter 7 of Shar Yichud Ve'amunah, of the gate, the pathway to what does it mean to truly believe? What do we believe? What is the Jewish belief and unity of God? Unity and the belief of God. Well, God says, I, Havaya, have not changed. God doesn't change. What does that mean he doesn't change? How do we understand that? There's a creation, and before creation, there wasn't a creation. How do we understand that in relationship to God? Well, as we say every morning in our prayers, Atahu nivra elam. Atahu shemenivra elam. You are the same before you created the world. You're the same after you created the world. Right. So you, and who you? Who is the you of God that we're speaking about over here? So we don't mean just the core essence of God, but we even mean the knowledge of God. After all, God is one with his knowledge, with his awareness. It's not something that's added to him. As Maimonides says, he is the knower, the knowledge, and the known all at the same time. The knower in us is me, my soul. Knowledge is the tool, the brain that is the tool of knowledge. And the known is that which I'm become aware of. Like I'm aware of, and you're aware of, that I'm holding a cup of coffee over here, l'chaim. Or that you are aware of some knowledge today that you weren't aware of yesterday. So for us, That's something that's been added to us. Whatever you know today that you didn't know yesterday, it's an addition. It's something more. You've changed. You become more through the knowledge that you attain, through the wisdom that you've gathered. You become more aware, more deeply connected, more authentic, more real. We all hope, right? But for God, which is beyond our capacity to clearly apprehend, his essence being and his knowledge are absolutely one. Therefore, there's nothing super added to God. So when he is knowing, he's knowing himself. When I'm knowing, I'm adding something. And even that which I do know, it's a compound. It's not a perfect unity with what I know. I am not my knowledge. I am not my knowledge. There's a plurality in my life. It's superadded, and therefore I change. We hope with the knowledge that we gain that we change for better. But the fact is, we change. That's the fact. But God is absolutely one, not compounded, but an absolute perfect unity, that he is perfectly one with what he knows. And therefore, from his perspective, there is nothing added, there's nothing new. So it's not like all of a sudden God knows now that there's this cup in my hand, or he brought this new child into this world and he's aware of it. It is from the small worm of the sea, the center of the universe. It is all a part of him, not hidden from him, not concealed from him, not anything added to him, as based on the teachings of Maimonides, which all the Kabbalists, explain, and Chabad teachings explain and give great depth to it. From this, says the Alter Rebbe, we can now come to a very the hotly debated issue amongst the sages of the Jewish people, great scholars, and says here the Alter Rebbe, based on this, certain scholars erred and made a terrible mistake, misinterpreted the Arizal's teachings. The Arizal, who's the modern day father of Kabbalah, who lived in Tzfas in the 1500s. Much of Hasidic teachings and Tanya teachings based on the Kabbalah, the mystical teachings of the Arizal. And he explained the doctrine called tzimtzum, contraction. Before his explanation, which the Alter Rebbe gives a fuller understanding of the concept, but before that, we purely took on faith the concept of an infinite God creating a finite world. What do we take on faith? Well, an infinite God can do whatever he desires, and he can create a finite world. But there was no understanding of that, how that came. How did God do that? He's God, can do as he pleases, as he chooses. The Arizal explained, Tzimtzum, that the Ein Sof of God, he contracted upon himself. He contracted upon himself, meaning the term actually is called siluk, which means departure. So that word siluk, departure, some sages, Talmudic sages, took it literally, that God removed himself. God is still in control, because obviously God's in control, but he's like sitting in his palace beyond and gazing, and because there's nothing that he cannot, perceive. Everything is in his purview, right? He's in control, but he's removed himself through, but he created a void, but a way by removing himself. In other words, these scholars understand the concept of tzimtzum, of contraction, literally, that God literally removed himself in order to create that vacuum, to create a space where finitude could take place. But the Alter Rebbe says, and today we'll only start the argument, he gives two arguments today of why that's wrong. Because that is suggesting, when you say tzimtzum literally, that God removed himself. Well, removed himself means that there's some kind of physical character then to God. Because to remove yourself means, like I remove myself from the from the camera, and now I put myself back, right? Physically, I had to remove myself. So it would suggest that there is some kind of removal, would mean, literally a removal means that there's some kind of corporeality towards God. And obviously there isn't. And those sages understand that there isn't, right? After all, they are believers. Furthermore, says it, based on what we just learned from Maimonides, that God doesn't change. Meaning, he and his wisdom, he and his knowledge are one. He is the knower, the knowledge, and the known is one. So he can't remove himself if his knowledge, you can't say his knowledge is even removed. Maybe say his essence isn't, his knowledge is removed. How can you say his knowledge is removed when his knowledge, the knower, the known, and the knowledge are perfectly one with God? Perfectly one with God. So just as God is everywhere and everything, so his knowledge is likewise. Those are two arguments. We're going to have more arguments coming up. We'll have to stay tuned for that. But this is a fundamental idea of the tzimtzum, contraction, and how to understand it. And the whole point over here in the understanding is to appreciate God's unity with creation, how the world is unified and truly one with him. L'chaim. Any questions, any comments?
Not capable of creating a void within himself?
Well, that's what we're talking about. That void is not literal. That's exactly the discussion. Well, is God capable of creating a rock that he can't lift?
Exactly.
So the question is an oxymoron. Why? Because if nothing outside of him, so how could there be a rock that he couldn't lift? To begin with, the question is not a valid question. It's suggesting that, oh, look, I made a cup that's, I can make something because it's outside of me, and it's so massive that I couldn't lift it because it's outside of me. It's not a part of me. But if it's a part of me, and it doesn't ever be removed from me because there's nothing outside of me, then that would not be a question, right? That's the mistake that's being made,
Still have questions,
right? And the reason why we ask that question is because we think God is a creator like we create. I create with something that is outside of me. God creates with something that is of him and never is removed from him. God doesn't change. Now, hopefully this awareness helps us to change. Because when we're aware that God doesn't change in the act of creation, he doesn't remove himself, right? He just conceals himself. Then you know what will change? Is that we want to look for him. And the more we're aware of it, the more you want to look for him. All right. A reminder, we have Torah studies tonight at 6:30. You don't want to miss it. TRC tonight, well, at 8 should be. Well, we'll see. No. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share